We all have that one friend who says, "You watch too many scary movies." They tell you to relax. They tell you the world is safe. But they haven't seen what you have seen. They haven't heard the footsteps following them on a quiet street. They haven't seen the face pressing against the glass at 3 a.m. Tonight, we peel back the layer of safety and look at the real monsters living among us. These are 5 true stories that will make you wish you had never left the house. Welcome back to the True Haunting Log. For those joining us for the first time, a warning. Everything you are about to hear is true. These are real accounts from real people who stared danger in the face and lived to tell the tale. We have curated 5 long, terrifying encounters for this log. So, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get comfortable. Just make sure you're actually alone. Let's begin. Story 11, the night bus. Public transportation is usually safe, but late at night, when the crowds are gone, it becomes a different world. This story comes from a woman named Chloe in London, back in 2017. It was a Tuesday night in November 2017. I had stayed late at the university library studying for finals. By the time I packed up, it was nearly 11:30 p.m. I walked to the bus stop in the drizzle. The streets were empty. When the bus finally hissed to a stop, I was the only one getting on. I scanned the seats. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. There was only one other passenger. He was sitting all the way in the back. A man in a gray hoodie, head bowed low. I sat near the front, close to the driver. I put my headphones in, but I didn't play any music. It's a habit of mine. I like to be aware of my surroundings. About 10 minutes into the ride, I felt that itch. The feeling of eyes burning into the back of your head. I pretended to adjust my scarf and glanced at the reflection in the window. The man in the back had moved. He was now sitting 3 rows behind me, and he was staring right at me. His face was blank, emotionless, just staring. My heart rate picked up. Maybe he's just getting off at the next stop, I told myself. The bus stopped. He didn't move. I waited for 2 more stops. My stop was coming up next. It was in a quiet residential area, about a 5-minute walk from my flat. I decided to test him. I stood up early, as if I was getting off at the current stop. Immediately, I heard him stand up too. I sat back down quickly. He paused, hovered in the aisle for a second, and then sat back down. Panic set in. He was definitely following me. The bus driver was an older man, focused on the road. I debated asking for help, but I didn't want to make a scene if I was wrong. My stop arrived. I had to get off. As the doors opened, I sprang up and jumped off. I didn't walk, I power walked. I heard the heavy thud of boots hitting the pavement behind me. I turned the corner onto my street. It was dark. The street lights were dim orange orbs reflecting in the puddles. I risked a glance back. He was there. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He was walking fast, matching my pace perfectly. His hands were in his pockets. I started to run. "Hey," he shouted. His voice was raspy. "Hey, wait up." I didn't answer. I sprinted toward my building. My lungs were burning from the cold air. I reached my apartment complex gate. I fumbled with my keys. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped them. I heard his footsteps getting louder. Slap, slap, slap. Running. I fell to my knees, grabbed the keys, and jammed the fob against the sensor. Beep. The gate clicked open. I threw myself inside and slammed it shut just as he reached the bars. He didn't scream. He didn't rattle the gate. He just stood there, on the other side of the iron bars, 5 feet away from me. He smiled, a slow, sickening smile. "Nice place," he whispered. Then he turned and walked away into the night. I moved out 2 months later. I couldn't handle the thought that he knew exactly where I lived. Story 12, the attic access. We like to think our homes are private sanctuaries, but sometimes the layout of a house hides secrets. This story comes from a teenager named Mark in 2015. My parents bought an old farmhouse to renovate. It was big, drafty, and needed a lot of work. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Inside my closet, there was a small access panel to the attic. It was just a piece of plywood screwed into the ceiling. We never opened it. A few months after we moved in, I started noticing things. Small things. My alarm clock would be turned slightly. Clothes I had folded on my chair would be on the floor. My laptop would be open when I knew I had closed it. I blamed my little brother. I thought he was pranking me. But then, the smells started. Sometimes, late at night, I would wake up smelling something. Earthy, like unwashed hair and stale tobacco. It would only last for a second, then fade away. One night in October, I was up late playing video games with my headset on. It was around 2 a.m. I needed to use the bathroom, so I took my headset off. Total silence in the house, except for a soft, rhythmic sound coming from my closet of creaking. I froze. I looked at the closet door. It was slightly ajar. I watched as a long, pale hand reached down from the top shelf and gripped the door frame. Someone was lowering themselves down from that attic access panel. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. A pair of dirty, bare feet swung down and hit the floor of my closet. Then, a man stepped out. He was emaciated, bones sticking out. His hair was long and greasy, covering his face. He was wearing the old winter coat that I had stored in there. He didn't see me sitting at my desk in the dark corner. He walked quietly to the center of my room and stood over my empty bed. He stood there for a full minute, staring at my pillows. Then he lifted the knife he was holding, a rusty kitchen knife, and he plunged it into my pillow. He stabbed the pillow 3 times, hard, thinking I was asleep in it. When he realized the bed was empty, he stopped. He slowly turned his head around the room. I didn't wait for him to spot me. I let out a scream that probably woke the neighbors a mile away. I threw my heavy mechanical keyboard at him and ran for the door. By the time the police came with dogs, he was gone. He had been living in the attic space for weeks. They found food wrappers, jars of urine, and a peephole drilled through the plywood, looking directly down into my room. He had been watching me sleep every single night. Story 13, the wrong turn. GPS is a lifesaver until it leads you somewhere you were never meant to go. This terrifying encounter happened to a couple, Sarah and Mike, on a road trip in 2019. We were driving through West Virginia, heading to a campsite. It was getting dark and we lost cell service. Our GPS, which we had downloaded offline, suddenly told us to take a shortcut to save 30 minutes. Mike took the turn. The road quickly turned from pavement to gravel, then from gravel to dirt. "This doesn't feel right," I said. The trees were closing in on both sides, scraping the windows. "It says we reconnect to the highway in 5 miles, Mike said, trying to stay calm. We drove for another 10 minutes. The road was barely wide enough for our car. Suddenly, around a sharp bend, Mike slammed on the brakes. The road was blocked. A large tree trunk had been dragged across the path. It wasn't fallen, it had been placed there. "I'll have to back up," Mike said, shifting into reverse. As the reverse lights illuminated the path behind us, we saw them. 3 men standing in the road behind our car. They hadn't been there a minute ago. They had stepped out of the woods as soon as we stopped. They were holding things. Chains. Bats. "Lock the doors," Mike yelled. But they were already locked. The men started walking toward the car. Slow, methodical. They weren't rushing. They knew we were trapped. Mike slammed on the gas in reverse. "Hold on." He drove backwards, wildly. The car swerved, hitting the brush. The men didn't even run. They just watched us. Mike managed to spin the car around in a small clearing, scraping the side against a tree. We faced the way we came. But now, another truck pulled out from a side trail, blocking our exit. High beams blinded us. We were pinned, tree in front, truck behind. Mike didn't hesitate. He saw a small gap between the truck and the ditch. "We're going through," he gritted his teeth. He floored it. Our small SUV roared. We hit the ditch hard. The car tilted dangerously. Mud flew everywhere. I saw a man reach for my door handle as we scraped past. I saw his face covered in dirt, missing teeth, laughing. We bounced out of the ditch and back onto the dirt road. Mike didn't lift his foot off the gas until we hit pavement 20 minutes later. We didn't stop until we found a police station 2 towns over. The officer turned pale when we showed him on the map where we had been. "We don't go up there," he said quietly, "and neither does the GPS. Usually." He told us that people disappear in those hills all the time, and we were almost added to the list. Story 14, the baby monitor. Technology connects us, but sometimes signals get crossed. Or worse, someone hacks in. This chilling event happened to a new mother named Amanda in 2020. My husband was working the night shift, so I was alone with our 6-month-old son, Leo. I put Leo down in his crib upstairs and went to the living room to watch TV. I kept the baby monitor on the coffee table right in front of me. Around 11 p.m., I heard a noise from the monitor. Static. Then, a voice. "Wake up, little man." I froze. The voice was deep, male, and it wasn't my husband. I stared at the screen. The room was dark, illuminated only by the nightlight. I couldn't see anyone. Maybe it was interference? Picking up a radio signal? Then the voice spoke again. "She's downstairs, Leo. She can't help you." My blood turned to ice. This wasn't interference. Someone was watching. I grabbed a steak knife from the kitchen and ran toward the stairs. But I stopped at the bottom. From the monitor, I heard a lullaby being hummed. A twisted, off-key version of Rock-a-Bye Baby. And then I saw it on the screen. The camera moved. It panned slowly to the left. Someone was controlling it remotely. But then I realized the camera didn't have a motor. It wasn't a remote control model. The only way it could move was if someone was physically in the room turning it. I sprinted up the stairs, screaming, "Get away from him." I burst into the nursery and slammed the light switch on. The window was wide open. The curtains were blowing in the wind. Leo was crying in his crib unharmed. But on the floor next to the crib were wet, muddy boot prints leading from the window to the crib and back to the window. The police found a ladder propped up against the side of our house. The man had been standing right there, holding the camera in his hand, talking to my baby while I sat downstairs. We moved the next day. I haven't used a baby monitor since. Story 15. The Mall Santa. We tell our children to trust figures of authority, but predators know how to blend in. This final story comes from a father named Greg from 2014. It was 2 weeks before Christmas. I took my 5-year-old daughter, Lily, to the mall to see Santa. The line was huge. When we finally got to the front, the Santa seemed great, jolly, laughing, the whole act. Lily sat on his lap. I snapped a photo, but as I walked up to get her, I heard him whisper something in her ear. Lily's face went pale. She looked terrified. She jumped off his lap and ran to me, burying her face in my leg. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked. She wouldn't speak. I looked at the Santa. He just winked at me. A creepy, slow wink. I figured she was just overwhelmed. We grabbed some food and headed to the parking garage around 8 p.m. The garage was mostly empty by now. Our car was on the 4th level. I was buckling Lily into her booster seat when she grabbed my arm. "Daddy," she whispered. "That's him." I turned around. Standing about 3 cars away was the Santa. But he wasn't in his suit anymore. He was wearing dirty jeans and a tank top, but he was still wearing the fake white beard. He was leaning against a concrete pillar, smoking a cigarette, watching us. "Hey," I yelled, trying to sound tough. "Can I help you?" He dropped the cigarette and stepped forward. In his hand, he held a tire iron. "She forgot to tell me what she wanted for Christmas," he said. His voice was deep and menacing. I slammed the back door shut and jumped into the driver's seat. I locked the doors just as he reached the car. Bang. He swung the tire iron against my driver's side window. The glass shattered, spraying me with shards. I fumbled with the ignition. He raised the iron again, aiming for my head. I started the car and floored it. The side mirror clipped him, knocking him down. I sped down the ramps, tires screeching, and didn't stop until I was on the highway doing 90. Later, Lily told me what he had whispered to her in the mall. He hadn't asked what she wanted for toys. He had whispered, "I'm going to take you home with me tonight." The police investigated the mall agency. It turned out the Santa hadn't shown up for work that day. The man in the suit was an imposter who had knocked the real Santa out in the locker room and taken his place, just to get close to the kids. And that brings us to the end of this log. 5 stories of obsession, infiltration, and near-death escapes. It makes you look at the world differently, doesn't it? The friendly stranger, the empty road, the quiet house. If these stories chilled you to the bone, please destroy that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a log. Share this video with someone who trusts people a little too easily. And remember, we want to hear your story. If you have experienced something paranormal or lived through a true crime encounter, email us at truehauntinglog@gmail.com. We read every submission, and we will make it happen on YouTube for you. Until next time, stay vigilant. And check your backseat.